Okay, so now we're going to get into a discussion about vectors. So before we talk about vectors and what we're going to be doing with them, let's discuss what exactly a vector is. So a vector is something that has magnitude and direction. So consider that a vector quantity might be like you saying, well, I'm going 50 miles per hour headed north. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. 50 miles per hour north. Okay, so this right here, this quantity represents the magnitude. Okay, how much? This right here represents the direction. So this is an example of a vector quantity. Okay, so a vector has a scalar, or I'm sorry, a vector is not a scalar, rather. A scalar would be just saying, oh, I'm going 50 miles per hour. Okay, so the moment that we say 50 miles per hour headed north, we've now made it a vector quantity. So scalar magnitude of a quantity, it can be represented by a real number, and a vector in the plane in this case is a directed line segment. So we've got a vector that we're looking at right here, and they call this the vector OP. It has an initial point O and a terminal point P. That's where it ends. All right. And so we're going to talk about vectors and what exactly those things are and how we can apply them. So let's take a look at a couple of problems. All right. So in the first question, it says let A, and it's bold. And I do want to point out that sometimes we may see A with the little symbol like that, but that's the same as this bold face A. All right. And I'm going to try to make it as dark as I can. That's the same. That means a vector. Okay. And then they say it's 3i. Well, where are they getting this I from? It's what they call a unit vector I, and it's the vector 1, 0, and this is the vector I. And then the vector j is 0, 1, and it's this vector going upward, okay, 0, 1. So that's what they're talking about here when they say A equals 3i and B equals I plus j. So then they say find 3a plus b. All right. So we're not going to worry so much about I being 1, 0 and j being 0, 1. They are going to want the answer in terms of I and j. We'll save working with the unit vectors a little bit later, So take a look at the first example. So if A equals 3i and B equal I plus j, then they want 3a plus b. So 3a plus b in this case is going to be 3 times 3i plus b, which is I plus j. Okay, so I plus j. So then we get something like this, 9i plus I plus j, which is 10i plus j. Okay, and so our resultant, okay, which is the sum of those two vectors in this case, is 10i plus j. And that's what we have there. Now, when we look at the second example, and let me switch markers here for you. When we look at problem number 2, okay, we're given vectors, and notice it kind of looks like an ordered pair, but it's got this angle brace. Okay, there's the vector 7, 3. That's A. And B is the vector 6, 1. Okay, they want the vector A minus B. And I'm going to put the little symbols like that because I'm not writing in bold. So all you have to do is take the first component, subtract it from the first component in the second vector. So in this case, it's a vector. It's got the angle brace. 7 minus 6 is 1, and 3 minus 1 is 2. So it kind of has like this right here, if you want to think about it like an X and a Y, similar to ordered pairs, but this is what they call the horizontal component, and this is what they call the vertical component of the vector. So this is just some basics on vector operations in terms of addition, subtraction. You can also multiply by a scalar. And what do I mean by that? It's something like this that I'm highlighting here for you. You can multiply a number by a vector, and that'll change the way that it looks as well. All right. So this is just a little bit on vectors, and if this video was helpful, be sure to like and subscribe.